Hello, Sacha.
Hi, good to see you.
Thank you for joining me today. I know you're pushed for time today, and I don't want to keep you too long, so if you don't mind, we'll crack straight on.
Happy to do so. Excuse the way I look. I've been pretty ill for the last 6 days, and today's the first day of ambling around in recovery. So not looking great, but feeling fine.
Sacha, it's been wonderful to watch the Arise USA tour, the wonderful bromance with you and Scott Mckay, the fun that you've had with leading Das and the rest of the team. Can you give us some of your personal highlights of the last 2 months? Because you've been on a roller coaster tour and it is highly significant. Can you give us some of the highlights of what it's been like for you?
Obviously riding with Bikers for Trump in Sturgis for a few hours, and all these beautiful guys with their big machines, that was great fun, and just seeing the degree of camaraderie that comes not just from being in a group of renegade, maverick, good humans, which are my favorite kind of humans. Not just that, but seeing the response from the public at large to that groundswell of flag waving patriots, hair in the wind, riding at breakneck speed. All of that that was a nice indicator of the fact that freedom is still very much, written into the culture here and is not going to go anywhere soon. For me, the main thing is not been driving across America 4 times in 2.5 months, meeting tens of thousands of people and exchanging spike proteins, as I joke with many people, because I've been sick 3 times in 2.5 months, and I never get sick in this world. So something's down, and this latest hit that's taken down Scott and the U.S. Navy SEALs who travel with us, and everyone's down, and this is a bad one. So it seems to me that we do have sort of evil in the air. Almost certainly these nanoparticulates are out there and are doing their thing. That notwithstanding, the pulse of Middle America that I've seen is alive and well, as I keep saying, and not just alive and well. It's picking up. This threshold of awakening is definitely on the up. There's no question about that in my mind. The fact that the biggest standing army in the world is in North America and is not going anywhere is, to me, the saving grace of humankind right now. Because if it weren't for the, 100 million, 200 million guns in America, we would be entering into a Luciferic new world order without any question of doubt. But this is the line in the sand. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. And with regards to Scott Mckay, how have you got on with him, and how did that relationship blossom? Because that's been fascinating to watch as well. It's been very good.
Well, the curious thing is I grew up in an African war, and surrounded with mercenaries and soldiers and guns and tough men that I grew up bouncing on their knees, and that was my whole growing up, and I'm comfortable, curiously enough, for somebody who's supposed to be something like something of an effete, liberal. That's my kind of disposition. But actually, I'm really comfortable traveling with hard men, and I like people who stand in their flame, stand in their truth. Scott Mckay is remarkable in that. I've watched him, I think, more closely than he's watched me. You see, he'd been told, stay away from me, that I'm a Vatican agent, the usual shit. And he'd heard this from a lot of the more scurrilous, let's say the less intellectually challenged members of his own network. Some of them had reached out and warned him against getting involved with me. So he was on guard in an intelligent way. He'd interviewed me before, and we'd got on famously, but he was guarded. And when we did meet, I'm observing him very closely. He's observing me very closely, because if you look at the Scott Mckay archetype, a gun-toting, tomahawk-wielding, angry white man with a militia, by best accounts, coast to coast, the Patriot Street Fighter Network, and believe you me, it is huge. When I say huge, I mean, 20 million strong. So I'm looking at him going, if he is a controlled figure, icon. This is genius. This is genius. This is how the globalists would work in a middle America to undo the patriot movement. This is genius. So I'm interested to meet him because I want to see for myself. He, on the other hand, is also looking at me going, this son of a bitch, may have been set up by the Crown, by the Vatican, by the CIA to, come in and disrupt the truth movement in middle America. So we're both coming in a very guarded but healthy space to each other. And I'll tell you, we just recognized almost instantly that when you exchange the fire in the eyes and you get beyond the suppositions or the speculations or the conjecture, and you just get into the being human and you exchange that fire and you allow your gut instinct or intelligence to do the readings, you know who you're dealing with. You're with a brother. And so it was just love, just a lot of love. And then observing the way he treats people around him with such unbearable kindness. I mean, he's tough as hell, don't get me wrong. You do not fuck with Scott Mckay. Do not fuck with him. But he's a kind man. On the same token, don't fuck with me, but I'm a kind man. So I'm actually surrounded by a lot of kindness. For 2.5 months, I've had a lot of tough guys with guns who are incredibly kind and considerate and philosophical, talking metaphysics, talking about Christ consciousness, really caring and feeling what other people feel. And that's testified by looking at the way the tour buses roll up. We spend 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes standing in the cold, talking to people outside. We're not sitting inside buses, and we're not, dashing back to the hotel. So Scott is always the last man standing. I tend to leave before he does. Most of the people that come to gigs are coming to see him. I have a very considerable following that come to see me.
Of course.
I can normally get through all of my autographs and things within two hours. But he's normally standing because he wants to really converse and talk and hear and feel and relate and exchange. That's the measure of the man. What can I say? It's an absolute delight to be with him. And Lee Dundas, the firebrand lead state prosecuting attorney, who happens to be a good friend of mine as well. And just the sheer lucidity of truth that she brings to the stage, to the table, is formidable. That formidable intelligence. But we've had, Christian Northrup and David Avocado Wolf and Dr. Eric Nepute, a great many, Renette Senham, all of these amazing icons in America joining us on stage. They're all variously friends. It's just been an amazing experience in terms of consolidating that camaraderie.
Yeah. And what do you think about this kind of tour type approach, this upbeat, high energy tour, versus the protests that you might see in London? These are different ways to get messages out there, different ways to show that you're standing up to be counted. What do you think about the differences between those two approaches?
So I respect every human being that opens their front door and walks out onto the street. But I've said at the same time that protests are factored into the Babylonian business model. I'll say it again. Protests are factored in so are petitions. Okay?
Yeah.
That's all control game. But a speaking tour, when you soapbox, when you jump up and you stick your flag in the ground and you speak your truth and you get your people to congregate and you speak unmolested and uninterrupted, whether it's for 20 minutes or 4 hours, that for me is where you really start to tamper with the fabric of the fucked up social ecology. And that's what's important about the speaking tour for me. That's why I chose to do it. I designed the Arise US Resurrection one, the one that the Nameless Wonder is now running around with. And I swung across to this one after Lee Dundas, myself, and Scott Mckay were so disgusted by the behavior of the erstwhile team leader. So, but the point I'm making is that standing on soapboxes and speaking truth to power and allowing people to congregate there, that to me is a very necessary formula right now to break this impasse of organized protests and organized petitions.
And how important do you feel the USA is as a a country to the world right now in terms of leading us out of this. I mean, obviously, there is a groundswell of patriotism there. You've got the Second Amendment, you've got the standing army there. They sound like they're ready to go, but they've been relatively quiet in the grand scheme of things. They haven't stood up and they haven't really protested. This is probably the biggest thing of significance that's actually happened in quite some time. How important do you feel America is?
Well, it's not just important; it's seminal. It is the vital element. If America falls, the world falls. That's absolutely certain. That's why I came here. I would never have crossed 4 continents to come here and do this insane jamboree. This is costing me tens of thousands of dollars. I don't make money. I don't solicit money. I don't have donations coming to me. So I am doing this because I believe it is absolutely essential at this time. If America falls, the world falls. You're not seeing protests in America in the way that you're seeing them in other parts of the world, and that's because America's got their guns. And ultimately, you don't need to see them protesting on the streets. Just try to take their guns from them. Good luck.
Yeah.
Really good luck with that. Good luck with that one.
Yeah. And with regards to the sort of crowd sizes, what would you say the average? I mean, I'd imagine it'd be quite different from state to state as you guys have been traveling through. What would you say a sort of average gig would be in terms of crowd size?
Not vast. 700, 2,000. We've had. I think tomorrow. If tomorrow's Monday, forgive me. I don't know if tomorrow's Monday. If tomorrow is Monday, I've lost count. This guy, I've been in my sick bed, like I said. But if tomorrow's Monday, then that's going to be thousands, almost certainly. And it could be, I don't know, it could be 5,000, 6,000. I don't know. But that's a baseball stadium.
Okay.
And the point is this. The point is this. Forgive me. We're dropping our venues and dates on a shoestring, couple of days' notice, and then people congregate. We're not doing 2-3 weeks, let alone 3 months marketing and promotion of a venue. We're literally getting a venue, which is a field or a farmer's whatever, and we've got a trailer that Lee Dundas takes in and sets up on the day, and we jump on the stage, and then we jump off, and we have 300, 400, 500 people, 700 people, up to 2,000 people. So you tell me. That to me is remarkable stuff, considering there is no marketing, no promotion. It's just viral networking. Now, what we do know by now, without any doubt, is that if we organized a tour in the normal way and had 3 weeks or 4 weeks to promote each venue with radio spots and the rest of it, it would be tens of thousands. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah. And with regards to your home is in Bali, the Americans seem to have taken you in as one of their own after this tour. What's the situation in Bali with regards to the COVID restrictions? Are you going to be heading back there soon, or what's the story there?
Not much chance of me heading back to my home. I've lived there for 17 years, as you know. I've got a very big operation out there, but no, I've lost that for the moment. No chance of me going back. So I'm not sure. I'm back to war child footing, which is how I grew up, and learning the art of detachment. It doesn't worry me too much. I'm desperately concerned about my staff in Bali, and I'm doing what I can to secure them, but they're being rounded up like scared cattle and forced vaccinated.
Terrible.
with a lethal
cocktail. And genuinely forcing them.
That's what mandatory is, especially when you've got military and guns doing it.
Terrible.
So yes, unfortunately, foreigners and expatriates are also being rounded up on the streets and frog marched to the airport and deported if they don't wear a pantyhose on their face. It's turned into some Orwellian diktat, and who would have thought? The jewel in the crown of Southeast Asia, the most beautiful island out of 17,600 islands of Indonesia, and or the most enlightened, not the most beautiful by a long chalk, but who would have thought that they would succeed in throwing an Orwellian dragnet over Bali and get away with it, these sons of bitches? And yet That's exactly what they're doing. I've got friends in very high places at ministerial level and, of course, royalty. And even they are advising stay away until this evil cloud has passed. Whether it's 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years, I don't know yet. I'll have to see.
Sacha, you've said, and it's given a lot of people hope, that we've already won this thing and it's just a matter of it playing out.
Sure.
To a lot of people just now, Sacha, it's not feeling like that, and we're very hopeful people. We've been holding the line. We want the best outcome here, but it's not feeling like it for a lot of people out there. When you speak with great confidence that we've already won. Can you maybe give us a insight into what makes you think that, and how it might play out from here, and in any way that you could shine a light on that would be valuable to us?
No problem. So it comes down to this. If you have the inner lens will be clear for you to be able to see the truth of an outcome, provided you're standing in absolute honor or pure truth in a given venue or situation. And in this case, the people who don't feel too comfortable about the now and don't feel comforted by my words, they need to reflect on what part they're playing, what role are they playing in this twilight zone, in this pantomime. What role are they playing? To what extent are they the ones permitting and enabling the status quo? So the person that you've described, is that individual paying their taxes? I guarantee you they still are. I guarantee you they still are paying coin to Caesar while Caesar is destroying them. And you see, that's the break point. And until that individual learns the art of pure honor, which is to stand in the flame, and if necessary, hurt and burn. But you've got to do that in order to fashion the inner lens where you can see the outcome. I see the outcome because I'm that far gone in my irreverence for imposed authority, which I call out for what it is. Saturnian, Luciferic nonsense. That's what it is. And again, I'm blessed because I've spoken to enough presidents, prime ministers, and kings and queens and said this to them and heard them understand and cogitate. Good leaders know the truth, that government is a satanic construct, that it's a Babylonian construct, that it was only ever a psychological operation against living souls in order to sequester the gold, in order to steal the land, in order to fictionalize the living and turn them into the dead. And that's all, in service of Baphomet or Moloch. So good leadership, recognize that, including good leadership in the Catholic Church, let me just say, including good leadership in Freemasons, just so you know. Spent a few hours the other day with a 32nd degree Freemason talking this stuff a few days ago. But the point I'm saying is that good humans, be they presidents or be they paupers, understand truth from fiction. Stupid people don't. Stupid people, by definition, in the main, are the middlemen. And unfortunately, we have a world now that's largely constructed on the third-party intervention. So most people in the world have an irrelevant job. It's the functionary job that serves the status quo. They are the parasite. They are a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a policeman or a soldier. No disrespect to all of the above, but you're all acting in service to something else. You have no creative control over what you're doing. And don't pretend you do. If you're a doctor, you're a goddamn serf to the pharmaceutical industries, and you know it. If you're a lawyer, you're a goddamn serf to the Bar Association, and you know it. If you're a teacher, you're a goddamn serf to the Ministry of Education and the Tavistock Institute and the Fabianists behind that, the global Marxists, and you know it. So the point I'm making is most people have chosen to continue to identify and indenture themselves into a false light narrative in their own lives. They have abnegated their own conscience and they have become the parasite. They are the technocrat. So that now we have this huge problem where most people and their livelihoods are pegged into the technocracy. And so they are perpetuating the destruction of themselves. And they just haven't, many of them haven't yet woken up to it. Many have. Many have. I know because I speak to so many who do come clean with themselves, bail the job, get out of the kill grid,
Yeah.
Go and start planting tomatoes and radishes, you know, and give up the glamour for a real life. But there's too few people who've done that. Now, that's not to say that the movement is not going to become a very big one, a groundswell. I think it is going to be. So that's why I say success is assured. The more of this witchery and evil that assaults humanity in your face, the darker that gets, the more texture it creates against which the light finds itself, defines itself in us, and then we bail and transmogrify or transmute or transcend reality from this into the other.
Yeah. And with regards to the controllers and how they run this world, I know that you've got some strong views on how they use time as a weapon, if you like. They use fear, they use money, they use debt, they use food, they use pharma, they've got the legal system, they've got AI. What do you feel with the weapons of control and fear that they have? Where do you feel they're strongest, and where do you feel they're weakest that we could chip away at or defy some of their control mechanisms?
So there's only one ultimately. I mean, we could talk about time, we could talk about money, we could talk about fear, we could talk about all of the apparatus of control and supremacy and dominion and evil. But actually, you could potboil it all down to one simple equation. And I like the simple equation. And the simplest equation is to do with you and and your own capacity to recognize your own divinity. So the fact that that's what the third-party intervention ultimately does, which is the Catholic Church or the government or the priest-banker class historically, have come in to intercede between you and I and our capacity to recognize our own divinity. So that's where cult programming and dream spelling and, you know, the Hollywood machine and the mutant academia and mainstream media and now weaponized social media and a weaponized high street and a consumerism, which is just alpha omega poisoning of the human biome and agrochemical poisoning of the air, the water and the soil and the oceans and the coral reef and all of that witchery and evil is all an orchestration which seeks to remove our relationship from ourselves, because we get pulled into fight or flight when we're not living in a harmonium, in a balanced ecosystem, and a life that birds are flying and tweeting happily, and lambs are frolicking, and the sun is shining, and the weather patterns are stable, and families emerge. When we're constantly fighting from being poisoned systemically, mind, body, and soul, that's where dystopia emerges. And this Orwellian kind of Kafkaesque twilight zone has emerged because of that witchery, because we allowed it to go unchecked for so long. And we continue to allow it to go unchecked. And we think that by reposting something on Facebook that we're challenging the status quo. Dear God, we're in trouble if that's the case.
Yeah. And that's a good way to look at it. You're boiling things down to their simplest possible way to communicate it. That makes total sense. And actually, having listened to you a lot, Sacha, you have got some incredibly descriptive little phrases, which I only seem to associate with you. Things like dream spell, a lovely little phrase. Do you want to go into what you mean by that? Because it's very descriptive and it does what it says in the tin, but just to help the audience sort of understand your interpretation of it, because dream spell comes up a lot and it's actually a big part of the problem. So could you cover off what you mean by dream spell?
Yeah. So let's look at one of the biggest dream spells right now that I'm surfing, which is patriotism. So patriotism is a dream spell, and patriotism, in and of itself is not a good thing. Patriotism is a sort of defiance of this versus that. So it's already on a war footing, and that's foundationally not a good thing. as a spirit in harmonium, in equilibrium, in balance. If we were enlightened as a species, there would be no need for flags or anthems. There'd be no need for cultural proclivities. There'd be no need to define and protect and defend anything from anything or anyone. We would always be in a state of harmonium and balance and equilibrium and so on. So the dream spell is where we've allowed ourselves to be sort of sucked in or subsumed into a cultural proclivity or to a moral proclivity. And this is the problem. So you've got a dream spell operating in the Islamic world, which is got varying degrees of fundamentalism, but you've got the same thing in Christianity. It's all about fundamentalism. The monotheistic religion is all about fundamentalism ultimately, and the Hindus the same. They're still worshiping blue elephants and what have you, and strange gods, and so they should. That's part of their, again, cultural proclivity, but it is part of a dream spell, because it's crystal clear, is it not, that a Hindu goes to his deathbed, praying to Ganesh, and will, by the grace of God, be met by Ganesh, the elephant, on the other side. The Egyptians will, be met by their gods, and the Kalahari Bushmen will be met by their gods, and Christians will be met by, and so it goes on. So the dream spell is really, I'm speaking to the fact that we need to recognize that life is a dream, and that's good. Mm-hmm. But the spell bit is the bond. So a dream spell is where the fluid quantum dream of limitless euphoria is interrupted and then bonded, and a spell cast upon it. So the dream spell is not a good thing. The dream bit is a good thing, and the spell thing is not a good thing. And spells are what governments and monotheistic religions, what the churchish mind does. It casts spells. It's all black magic, all of it. And government is all about black magic. So is the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government are all predicated on black magic, on satanic logic, all of them. The block black capital letters that you're required to fill out in those forms when you register your soul to Lucifer through those form fillings, and you register your babies to the crown or to the state, and you register your tractor to the state. You're literally taking everything that is real and you're handing it over to the fiction and saying, okay, I'm offering it up to Regis, to Rex the king, and you're signing it away. So this is a sacrifice of innocence, but you are the one who is offering yourself up for sacrifice. And that's written into the universal law, that the devil, so to speak, is allowed, or the proverbial serpent in the Garden of Eden is allowed to whisper shit in your ear, and is allowed to entice you and enchant you into abnegating your sovereignty and to surrendering the fabric of your soul. And we do it. I spoke on stage the other night, and I got a bit animated because I got momentarily seized with a fucking anger about the death of Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington and Michael Hutchence. Mm-hmm. Those three beautiful singers who were my contemporaries, and the three of them murdered, found dead in hotel rooms with their necks broken, hanging by a doorknob. Why is that not one of the biggest scandalous stories in the modern world? That three beautiful young men were murdered in their hotel rooms, hung by a piece of string to a doorknob. Well, that was Tell No Man. That was a satanic ritual killing of three young guys who came close to the flame of evil in the rock and roll world, and then were, by best accounts, about to out and tell the truth. And look what happened to them. And that's something that needs to be spoken to. So but that's how the dream spell is cast. It's cast through blood rites, blood ritualism, blood banks, and the harvesting of blood, and Caesarean section birth, C-section birthing. All of these things are diabolical in the truest sense of the word, diabolical. And sorry, young mothers who've chosen to have a C-section or have had one, you've committed a grave crime unless you had to have it, unless you absolutely had to have that, in which case you're blessed. And there are protections there. But to willfully choose to have a child cut out of its mother's belly is so wrong. You assault that child's microbiome, because it can only pick up the correct microbial flora and fauna when it's moving through the plasma of the birth canal and comes into the light, and then the vitamin D impacts it once it hits air, and then it's supposed to go to the mother's tit to get the colostrum, and then that triggers the microbiome, and that child has an immune system. Now you pull a baby straight out of the womb through a C-section, bundle it up and stick it in incubator. You've just killed that child's immune system before it even breathed air. It's so awful. And the afflictions and the illnesses that can come and beset that generation, those generations of kids who are being born to C-section. But you see, that's all part of this dream spelling of mutating the relationship that exists between mothers and children. It's another form of human trafficking. And then the state sells that stuff, and the medical industry and sell these memes and ideas so that they become normalized. They become the status quo. Of course, growing babies in petri dishes is going to be next on the menu for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And another, that's a very good description of that. So thank you for that. Another thing that you say a lot, which I like the sound of, is right action. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. All I mean by that is to not ever move against your conscience. So the right action is, number one, there has to be an action. So unless you're a Buddhist monk, but other than that, we have to be engaged now in action one way or to other. So right action is simply adhering to the remit of conscience and never allowing oneself to move against one's conscience. And I speak about right action because I'm that stupid that it took me so long to work out the algorithm for me in life. And, you know, I've got a fairly good mind. I've got a terrible brain, but I've got a good mind. And because I don't understand time, and I'm terrible with systems, and, you know, I don't know how to unlock a telephone. I'm just terrible. But I've got a good mind. I know how to surf the quantum realms. And, sorry. So let me jump back. So that's it. So it's taken me quarter of a century to work out that algorithm, that the path of least resistance to the highest outcome in any situation you'll find yourself in this world or the next, is simply to conduct right action in the flame of pure truth.
Yep.
And to recognize the living moment. So I add that, you know, because the time is alive. Time doesn't exist, but the now must come alive. That describes actualization. And if we're serious about the Gospels and about, you know, all the idolatry that we're drunk on with our religious bullshit, then let's actualize and become the living flame, the living gospel. Because I know not enough about Christianity to beat the average Christian up in a theological debate. The same thing in Islam. I'm pretty expert in Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi, and the different schools of Islam. I've studied them 30 years ago and 25 odd years ago. And I understand. I did so much studying when I was younger. I haven't read a book since 1997. So I stopped in 97. 1st of August, I said, that's it, boom. I departed time. I terminated my relationship with the clock, with time. Said, I'll never speak to it again in this world. I will never, ever acknowledge and accede to TikTok tyranny of 1260 Babylonian interventionism, because I saw in a state of, I'd say, prophetic euphoria, I went into a kind of, I guess, a prophetic state for a couple of weeks. And I saw clearly what time was, that it was the root algorithm of the false light, of the Luciferic, of the satanic, of the Saturnian, of the anti-human, of the anti-Christed, and that it was 1260, tick-tock, 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 this relentless fucking thing in the kitchen or in the hallway that is telling you that you're running out of all it's doing. And you think about, you compound that with hundreds of millions of clocks and now digital algorithms that are all calibrated into this grand deception. And that is creating a field effect. This tick-tock, tick-tock, we're running out of time. We're running out of air. We're running out of oxygen. We're running out of water. We're running out of gold. We're running out. Yeah, it's so clever. But it's an orchestra of deception, and it maintains a thrall over us. And going back to the previous question, that is what anchors the dream spell, just so you know, 1260 time.
And with and as you use this word a lot as well, the word Christed, how does that tie in with right action and dream spell, or does it, because you say it a lot and it makes sense, but I'd like to hear what your interpretation of it.
Sure. Happy to do so. I don't have probably long enough here to go into the real metaphysics or let's say the archaeo-cosmological principles behind the Christic value or the Christed element. But let me, in simple terms, put it down to the Christic as in the crossing, the cross, the vertical plane as it intersects with the horizontal plane, which is to say time, space, and the crossing of time and space, and the center point of that is the still point. You could think in terms of the head and the heart. Think in terms of emotionality. Of the emotion and the thinking. Those are the two primary elements that make us, real and allow us to fabricate reality and to assimilate reality. So emotionality and intellectuality, the thinking, the tick-tock of the brain and the tick-tock of the human heart. When those two elements are brought together and intersect, they, in a perfect situation, they negate one another. So an enlightened human being, by definition and distinction, is one that is not indentured into their thinking, has actually gone into a still point in the brain and is now able to surf the quantum realm. And that same enlightened individual is no longer caught up in psycho-emotional dramatics, but is able to essentially situate themselves in equilibrium, in a still point within their emotional body. So the Christed value, the Christic value, is the one where we have learned to harmonize the polarity and the binary logic of the world that we were born into. And we have tamed those two wolves, so to speak, the sun and the moon, the male and the female. And we found the still point. We found the middle path. This is the Christed element or aspect. This is the still point. That is why Christ went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. It was in order to do combat with the devil, his own devil, in order to arrive at that still point. Again, that harmonium. And now every single human being is required, essentially, to arrive at that state of inner enlightenment. And so the Christed light emerges when you stand in the flame of pure truth. And in the state of pure truth, you move into a so-called phase conjugation with the divine flame. Because pure truth, there is no shadow, doesn't cast a shadow. You can call it central suns when the sun is directly above you. Look at the sun as being the harbinger of pure truth. When you stand directly beneath it, you cast no shadow. And that's the logic of this bloody telephone is going off. Forgive me.
It's okay.
I hope it's not interrupting you.
No, it's okay.
But so the Christed value or the Christed element is that which emerges out of the still point when we find harmonium and equilibrium and balance within who we are, who we be. So that is the I am, so to speak. I'm sorry for being long-winded on this. It's just, no, it's a loaded question, and so
no. I'm glad we covered that off, because that's it's a great description of it, and I think it will make a lot of sense to a lot of people who are watching this. So thank you for that. We spoke earlier, and you touched on this as well. In the UK, we have some issues at the moment where you've got people saying such and such is a shill, and they're controlled opposition. It's everywhere. People I really, really respect, including myself, who I happen to respect, who's been called certain things. Yourself, Sacha, you've been up there, someone I respect, and I watch you. My gut instinct tells me you're a good man and you're doing good things. But I've heard things about you. I've heard things about Dolores Cahill, another person I really respect. Of all the people that I've spoken to, I felt that you might be one that I could actually put this subject matter on the table. Why is this out there? And who are the types of people who come out with these things? Is there any truth in it for some parts of this controlled opposition? What's your own views on this?
In the first instance, there is universal law presides over everything. And the only question that you need to ask in a situation like this is, what is the standing of the individual who is leveling, bearing false witness, or is speaking truth? What is the standing of the individual? What is the nature of the little turd in an armchair, tapping away at their keyboard, deriding, desecrating, and defiling the noble works of good people like Professor Dolores Cahill, happens to be a good friend and is a very Christed human being, just so you know.
Very much so, yeah.
Enlightened human. Yeah, remarkable human being. So take the stature of a Professor Dolores Cahill and look at her in your mind's eye, and then take the little fetid turd in his basement who's tapping on his and put him beside Dolores Cahill, and then ask the question, is there any relevancy to what's being said? I think the answer is self-evident. It doesn't matter what the turd in a basement tapping on a screen thinks or says or does. That individual has zero relevancy in this world. That individual is the parasite, and therefore you ought not to even give the parasite your attention, because to place plasma or attention on the parasite is to give the parasite exactly what it wants. But that's not even the true, the Rubicon is connected to our intuition, our gut instinct,
yes,
and what we know and what we read from the psionic intelligence. So that really must be our gauge moving forward. For me, I mean, it's so obvious to me. It's black and white. I see the most disgusting and scurrilous things written about David Icke, written about myself, written about Brian Gerrish, one of the names we mentioned earlier, a man who I know and have met multiple times and been on the stage with, and I can tell you, he's an enlightened soul, a beautiful Christian man.
He's a great guy.
Who is such a courageous soul. Love him to death. Yeah, love him to death. But most of these truthers and speakers are just remarkable humans, and I see things on them, and I see things on myself come up and say, whoa, okay, that's a special kind of evil, that trolling, but it happens. It happens, you know.
Yeah, and with regards to, we spoke earlier. We've got quite a big Scottish audience here and a UK audience who'll be watching this video. Do you have any connections with Scotland? Have you been here? Have you got any relatives going back a long way in the past?
Okay. Oh, too fresh. I'm from the Murray clan. So I am Scottish. Just so you know, I am Scottish. There's my dirty secret is out. I am not the son of Sir Roderick Walt, whatever they're saying I'm a Rockefeller. I wish to God I was. I would so know what to do with the money. But no, I'm Scottish, toot pressed, Murray clan, and we hail from the Orkney Islands. And I love my Scottish roots. Love them deeply. Yeah.
And have you ever had a chance to visit Scotland in your time over the years?
Of course. Good God. Good God, multiple times. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, if you get a chance,
Loch Lomond generally is where I tend to settle around that area is where I'm kind of happiest. But yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, listen, Sacha, I didn't want to keep you too long today because we had a wee chat before, and I know you've another interview to go to straight after this. Can I just say thank you for your time today? It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. And I wish you all the best with the remaining part of the tour. I know wherever you end up in the world, if Bali's not an option for you, I know wherever you are, you'll be in good company and you'll be well received by any country or state who gets a chance to have you there. Where do you think you will end up then if Bali's off? That's an unusual situation to be in after 17 years. Where do you think you might end up?
I'm not planning on bailing Bali. It's just that I've got, like I said, a very big operation there. So I have to remotely continue to buoy up my operation, my staff and my home, my household and all the rest of it. But the point is this, I know how these things play out. They can take years. I don't know how it's going to go. None of us do.
Yes.
I'm thinking of going to El Salvador next week.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck with the rest of your travels. You're doing some great work. You're bringing a lot of joy and hope to people, and it's very much appreciated what you do. So keep it up, Sacha, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, brother. Send me the link and we'll get it out. Much love to you.
All the very best.